I became a Christian when I was 13. I didn't grow up going to church. My family wasn't a very religious family. But when I was 13 years old, I had this desire to start going to church. Weird, right? So I talked to my parents and we started visiting different churches. And if you've ever visited a church or maybe thought about visiting a church, maybe your experience was like mine, or maybe you think your experience would be like mine. As we went to these different churches and we walked through the door, it was almost like you took a step back in time. And all these different churches, they had their own culture and ethos that seemed so out of touch and out of date with what was going on in society. I mean, you had to act a certain way, dress a certain way, talk a certain way, and I just didn't get it. And also about the same time, I started going to a Bible study that my friend had at his house. And I didn't know much about Christianity, so I'd ask these high school students about Christianity, and the number one answer that I got from them was, I don't know. Or they would say, well, in the Bible it says blah, blah, blah. And I would ask them, well, where in the Bible does it say that? And they would always say, well, I don't know. So I came to a point in my journey of faith where I discovered and just thought to myself, you know, you Christians don't even know what you believe, and the church is just out of touch. So I gave up searching for God. And probably a few months after giving up on God, my family was invited to visit this one church. So we went, and for some reason we stayed. And we were there for a few months, and then I started to contemplate this truth, that if God really is who He says He is, if He really is real, then the decision that I make about God is the most important decision I'll ever make in my life. And I started researching, I started asking questions, I started reading the Bible for myself, and I came to a point in my life where I discovered that God was real. And so I gave my life to God, I was baptized into Him, I became a Christian. But I wanted to make it my mission as a Christian to be somebody who knew what I believed, who knew what I lived for. And I discovered that living a life for God is the best life that could ever be lived, because God created us, He designed us, and He placed eternity inside of our souls so that if we would reach out for Him, then we would find Him. When I became a Christian at 13, God was preparing me from that point to now, to bring me to where we are now, to launch a brand new church in the city of Norfolk. On September 14th, we're launching The Rising, a community of faith. It's a church designed to see people far from God raised to true life. We're starting this church for people who would never see themselves at church. We're starting this church for people who don't go to church. We're starting this church for people who are far from God to realize that God isn't far from them, and He never has been.